Welcome to NHL Quick Hits. I'm David Crosby, joined by Steele Roden, and we start today with Petr Mrazek's return to the Hurricanes net after missing 31 games with a fractured thumb. He showed no signs of rust, shutting out the Dallas Stars in a 1-0 win for Carolina. Incredibly, Marazzic is tied for third place for the league lead in shutouts with 3, despite playing only 6 games. Now, Carolina has a pretty big decision to make here. Alex Nedeljkovic has a .924 save percentage. James Reimer is a solid 14-4-1, but Marazzic is clearly ready to take back the lead role here. So, Steele, should the Hurricanes keep all 3 goalies or look to move one ahead of the deadline?
Well, first and foremost, like you said, I think we should give a pat on the back for James Reimer and Alex Nedeljkovic for the incredible and phenomenal job that they did in Petr Mrazek's absence. Like you said, 8-4-2 for Nedeljkovic, as well as 14-4-1 for Reimer. So pat on the back for them for getting the job done while Mrazek was absent with that thumb injury. But honestly, I don't think they should unless they're trying to round out their bottom 4 defensemen there. I don't really feel like there's a point in getting rid of any of their goaltenders right now, unless it's going to be James Reimer. I think that would be the one to go. Petr Mrazek, 29 years old. He's your starting goaltender. You have to keep him. You have to sign him for as much, whatever the cost is for how long you can keep him there for. But Reimer, 33 years old. He's done a great job. He's never been that type of guy to do well when he's the starting goaltender. So he's a phenomenal backup goaltender. He plays his best when he's splitting the crease with someone. I think if you want to keep him and keep that veteran experience going into the postseason and wait for Nedeljkovic to kind of, grow a little bit more, even though we've been playing really well, I don't think there's a reason to make the move unless you're going for a guy like Mattias Ekholm and you can, round out the bottom 4 of your defenseman pair.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We all saw what happened with Colorado last year when they had to start Michael Hutchison in those few elimination games. One goalie goes down, all of a sudden you're down 2 goalies, and that's pretty much it for your entire season. So I also think Carolina is a good enough team that unless someone is willing to give up a player that helps them right now for James Reimer, you might as well hang on to him in case Marazzic goes down again. Now, Eric Staal, a former Carolina Hurricane, will make his debut for the Montreal Canadiens Monday night against the Oilers. What kind of impact do you see Staal having on this team?
Well, I think he's going to have a tremendous impact. And Eric Staal has been one of my favorite players since I've been watching hockey and since the beginning of his career. I just loved what he was able to do with the Minnesota Wild. And I think we can all agree that this is Eric Staal's worst year in his entire career when he was with the Buffalo Sabres. For the 32 games so far this season, 10 points in those 32 games. We've never seen this bad of a year for Eric Staal unless you go all the way back to his rookie year where he had 31 points in 81 games. So I think the confidence wasn't there in Eric Staal. There was no chemistry with those players. He, being one of those veteran guys on a relatively young team, you're trying to do as much as possible, but Eric Staal wasn't able to get that with the Buffalo Sabres. And I think going into Montreal, he knows what he's getting there. He knows they're a physical and talented team. Exactly with the acquirements at the beginning of the season of Tyler Toffoli and Josh Anderson. So he's going into an organization which he believes that they can get the job done, especially with the goaltending. The guys on the back end, like Jeff Petrie, having one of those phenomenal careers as well. So I think with the Montreal Canadiens, he can finally get his confidence back. I think he's an underrated passer. So playing on a line with Jonathan Drouin and Tyler Toffoli, I think is going to do wonders for him and kind of get his confidence back. And I think he's going to hit the ground running in his debut tonight.
Well, you can never have enough center depth, that's for sure. But do you think Montreal is done dealing this season?
I think they're done, and I just don't really see what kind of player they can go out for. If they do want to go get someone, they have a lot of weapons on their arsenal right now. They have a lot of draft picks, prospects, some depth players that they can send for, exactly the same for the Carolina Hurricanes. If they're looking to round out their bottom 4 defense pair, again, like a guy like Mattias Ekholm. So I think they will be done, but if they want him, they can go out and get him.
Well, let's move over to the West. The Coyotes extended their lead over the Blues to 3 points for that final playoff spot in the West Division, thanks to Jakob Chychrun's first career hat trick. Arizona's young defenseman capped off the Hattie with the overtime winner for his 12th of the season, giving him a share of the goal-scoring lead among defensemen with Darnell Nurse. I don't think before the season anyone would have pegged them 1-2 in defensive goal scoring, but along with Chychrun, young Coyotes players Conor Garland, Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Christian Dvorak, all 25 years of age or younger, are 5 of the team's top 6 scorers, along with Phil Kessel. Now, what do you think the future holds for this core? Is it enough to finally make Arizona a perennial contender, or do they leave you a little bit underwhelmed?
I think they have a really bright future, and you and I have talked a lot about these young teams like the Vancouver Canucks, the Arizona Coyotes that have been prospering and going in the right direction. We're finally starting to see that shift from last decade to the beginning of this one, where teams that were in the last decade who won Stanley Cups, like the LA Kings, who made it to the finals, like the San Jose Sharks and Nashville Predators, are finally kind of shifting downward in the standings and becoming one of those teams like the Arizona Coyotes were for the last decade. Now it's finally their turn. See how far they can get. We'll see about that in the playoffs, but we're finally seeing the skill, the talent, and the commitment from the players on the Arizona Coyotes. And the two biggest takeaways, we've talked about it, Antti Raanta and Darcy Kuemper, one of the best tandem goaltenders in the league right now. And when they're not hurt and they're in the game, they're on their game and they're at the best of their abilities. But the two guys, and we already mentioned one who have really stuck out to me, was Conor Garland and Jakob Chychrun. Those guys have really elevated their game this year. And 28 points to Garland, 25 points to Jakob Chychrun. Chitran had 26 points in 63 games last year, 25 and 38 this year so far. So we've already seen the elevation and what these guys can do to step up as well in the defensive end as well as in the offensive end. Like you said, Jakob Chychrun, 12 goals on the season, already tying the most in his entire career for a season length. So I believe this team is going to be really great for the future. It all depends what they can do with the draft picks. Obviously we know that they got a couple of draft picks taken away from that scouting combine scandal. So I believe this team is headed in the right direction, and we'll see where they can go from here heading into the postseason if they can clutch up that 4th spot.
So you see their future as bright. Let's talk a little bit about the present or the near future. The Blues and the Sharks are lurking 3 points back of the Coyotes, and they each have a game in hand. Let's go back to that crystal ball, because you've been pretty red hot with your predictions this season. Who do you like to grab that 4th spot in the West, and why?
It's going to be tough, and it's the same exact reason for what's going on in the Central Division. Those teams, it's going to be a photograph finish for them, and it's going to be a photograph finish for the Coyotes, Blues, and Sharks. I do give the edge a little bit to the Coyotes in this sense, just because of their goaltending this year. Darcy Kuemper and Antti Raanta, when they're healthy, they really do get the job done. Jordan Binnington hasn't been as solid as we've seen him last year and a couple years ago when they won the Cup. I think it comes down to the Coyotes and Blues, and the Blues beating them out by a couple of points just because of their goaltending, as well as the offense you're getting from the back end and Jakob Chychrun, as well as those young guys up top like Conor Garland, Nick Schmaltz, and Clayton Keller.
Yeah, it's so impressive what Arizona's done with Darcy Kuemper on the shelf and then Antti Raanta going down. Adin Hill has really held down the fort there and kept them in this playoff race. Like you, I have a feeling the Blues are going to turn it around and put the heat on Arizona down the stretch here. But I'm really rooting for the Coyotes to pull it out and grab a playoff spot. They might not have the most talent, but they're a really hardworking team with a few really solid young players. And I think it could make for a great playoff series in the first round. But that's going to do it for today's episode. On behalf of Steel Roden, I'm David Crosby, and thanks for tuning in to NHL Quick Hits.